Good morning. Happy Sunday. I am back with another nutrition lesson for you. In this week's lesson, I'm going to teach you how to set goals that work for you and not the other way around. So hopefully the audio is working. We are all set up. I do not know why it is so bright on Facebook Live, but it's what we've got. So I've been having a lot of conversations with people about this topic, mostly because it is that time of year. People are reflecting on what they've accomplished in 2021, what they want to accomplish in 2022, what goals they set that they didn't accomplish that they want to roll into the next year. So people harp on New Year's resolutions mostly because they don't go too well for most folks. But unpopular opinion, I love them. I think they're great. I just think that they're applied in a way that set people up for failure. So we're going to talk about that today, how to set better goals that work for you. This lesson is appropriate for all goals and backgrounds. So we are going to attack this topic from three different angles, three different types of layers that you can view goals from. So first, we're just going to talk about what they are and kind of the psychological background that occurs when we are setting goals. So what is a goal? A goal is basically just a desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen unless there was some intervention. And another like fancier way of putting it is it's a detour from the path of least resistance, meaning you have to do something new in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And even if it's not new, maybe you've done it before, you haven't done it in a long time. So goals are things that we want, but maybe have difficulty achieving because of many reasons, but mostly because there's behavior change that is required. So most people end up abandoning goals, and that's why I think New Year's resolutions get such a bad rap. So I know I have abandoned goals. I know that you probably have. So why does this happen so easily and frequently, and what can we do to prevent it? First, we are going to talk about what's known as the negativity bias. Uh, Basically identifying areas that are negative or that you're not satisfied with are the easiest part of this whole process of setting goals. So our brains are literally wired for it, and it's called the negativity bias. So researchers have found that the brain seems to react more strongly to stimuli that it deems negative than it does to positive stimuli. So it's hypothesized that from an evolutionary standpoint, this bias helps keep us out of harm's way because we remember, hey, that like wasn't a good thing. Let's not do that again. So in essence, our brains have developed this system over time to help us identify and avoid danger, or even help us make decisions that it knows will result in a positive, advantageous outcome. So sometimes this process helps us avoid danger. So an example of that, I was trying to think of something that just like really resonated with me that I remembered um, within this negativity bias that shows that negativity bias. So I remember sitting in elementary school, there was like the local fire station came and did a presentation. And I remember this firefighter explaining how shutting doors in your house can help prevent fires from spreading as quickly as they do when the doors aren't shut, because of smoke and how fire travels. And so it can be the difference between life and death. And so I remembered this, I think I was like in like second grade or something, and I have been crazy about it ever since. It's just something that has always resonated with me. And so my husband was like, why are you like crazy about shutting the kids' bedroom doors? at night, and then I explained it to him. So this would be an example of a negativity bias. My brain was like, shut all the doors because it will help in a fire. So now that's what I do. Um, but you probably notice the negativity bias more in daily scenarios. And I see this more often as a coach in daily scenarios. So maybe when you read the news, for instance, when you're watching the news or reading it, you are drawn to more negative articles, and that's why the news puts out more negative articles or highlights them more because they get more attention. It is appealing to that negativity bias. Um, or maybe you notice that you remember things, maybe you ruminate on small things, like maybe someone said something negative to you, and so your brain kind of focuses on that and replays it. Maybe you notice when you look in a mirror, you are more apt to look for the things that you think are negative or unacceptable or that are outside of societal or cultural norms instead of things that are more positive. Maybe you like your hair color or your shoulders or something like that. You dial in on things like stretch marks or something that you would deem as unacceptable. So from a evolutionary perspective, that can also apply in that situation with body image, as fitting into societal and cultural norms can result in a more positive or advantageous outcome for folks. Think about like hiring processes at um, work, right? Promotions. If you fit into a what would be deemed as societal norms or cultural norms, you might be hired more than someone who doesn't. Um, so it might result in like promotions or stuff like that. And you can apply that to the dating world, friendships. It's just how our world works, unfortunately. So that's how the evolutionary perspective that I talked about can apply here. So we have this vision that we want to change, likely because we see something that we want to change because of this negativity bias. And um, oftentimes in the realm of nutrition and training, it is something very specific. So maybe we see someone on social media and we're like, wow, they have an amazing deadlift. They are deadlifting 300 pounds. I want to deadlift 300 pounds. That is my new goal. Or as a nutrition coach, I more commonly see people talk about quote unquote body goals. They see a physique on social media and they're like, I want to look like that. And so that is their new goal. They kind of like internalize those goals. So, where people tend to go wrong here is they set a goal that just isn't appropriate for them. And it can be for a number of reasons. Um, but we're going to focus on two of them that I see more frequently. So number one would be they're just like not ready for it. So say you're a new lifter and you see that person deadlifting 300 pounds and you're just like really inspired by them and you're like, I want to deadlift 300 pounds. That's an awesome goal, but it's not the right goal for you, at least now. So they first need to learn how to deadlift, right? They need to master form and they need to get more familiar with implementing certain training concepts, like progressive overload. They need to get more familiar with how their body reacts to training. They need to establish a training routine and consistency. So there's a lot of stuff that happens before that 300-pound deadlift. Um, so this is important because, and I'm sure you've seen it in the group too, otherwise they might go to the gym, they download the programming for the week, they got all ready, and then they start lifting and their deadlift doesn't look like that person's deadlift, and they start to get overwhelmed and maybe defeated, and they don't know what they're doing, and it just kind of spirals from there. So I see this scenario a lot in nutrition. People set the goal of changing their body composition, and so they will reach out to me as a coach, and want to start the process, but they set like an arbitrary goal, like having a body goal that they saw off of social media, and they just don't have the knowledge or the skill set yet to implement the behavior changes required to achieve that goal. And also, that goal might be so arbitrary when it comes to like body goals that it's just not even realistic. Maybe they're comparing themselves to someone who use, uses performance enhancing drugs, or who is a like bikini competitor, or who just has a completely different body type than they do. So this usually comes up when someone will be like, so and so, and then they'll send me a picture, and I'm like, yeah, that person has like 15 or 20 pounds more muscle than you do, and has been training for 2 decades. They just don't have the knowledge that they need to be setting specific body composition goals like that. So if they weren't to reach out to me or to reach out to another coach and understand, hey, that's like a very, very long-term goal. And even then, body goals aren't appropriate goals regardless. Like, you shouldn't pick a random body out in the universe and be like, yeah, that's the goal that I want to work towards, because it's just unrealistic. We all have different genetic backgrounds, different builds. So, and you just don't know the whole story to that body. So if they weren't to reach out to me and have that be explained to them, if they were to just go out and start dieting, maybe they jump into a caloric deficit thinking that that is what it would take to achieve that goal, they might get like thrown off, right? They might give up within the first week or two because they didn't realize that they didn't have the habits in place to achieve what they wanted to achieve. They didn't have the knowledge that they needed in order to create that deficit. And so they start asking questions, like they start having self-doubt. Am I eating what I need to achieve my goals? Or do I have the discipline that it takes to do this over the long haul? Maybe they make a mistake that's off plan and they see the scale increase, or they feel dejected that they didn't stick to their whatever their plan was. So you can see it can kind of go astray really quickly within the first week. And this is what tends to happen with New Year's resolutions, is people will be like, I am going to work towards this body goal, or I am going to work towards this training goal. And then they start to do the thing within a few days and they realize, I do not know what I am doing. I do not know. And instead of basically chalking it up to not having the knowledge skill set that they need to apply in order to start working towards that goal, they blame themselves. This is just what I do. I always fail. I don't have what it takes. I'm just destined to stay like this. And so it spirals from there. So as you can see, it's really, really easy to set yourself up for failure, especially when you're setting big New Year's resolution goals. You envision this change that you want to see, and you start the process, and you realize this isn't going so hot. So this is the difference between a learning goal and a performance goal. And again, we see this often in the group when it comes to newbies. You download your training and then you set a goal and you're like, I want that 300-pound deadlift. And then you go to the gym and you're like, I don't know how to deadlift. And there's a lot of little things that need to be accomplished and work towards before you start setting larger goals like that 300-pound deadlift. So sometimes you'll hear this referred to as a process versus an outcome goal. So I'm going to kind of like dive into what that means. It's great to envision like the ultimate change that you want to work towards, right? even if it's not that 300-pound deadlift, even if we're not that specific, the idea behind the 300-pound deadlift is excellent, right? You want to get strong. Like, you want to do things that make you feel empowered, and that is a like personification of that idea. So it's, you want to take that concept and that vision that you have, and you want to start focusing on the process that it's going to take to get there instead, and build goals around that process. So process oriented goals. um, so for example, for that newer athlete, it's great that they want to work towards that deadlift, but instead of saying, I am going to deadlift twice my body weight this year, a better, more productive goal would be to say, I'm going to start establishing a routine towards the gym. Right now, I am not training at all. I am going to start to work towards getting 3 to 4 days consistently from January to March. And so then you have a little bit of wiggle room, and you can start building that consistency in the gym. Maybe you make it a goal to post form checks a few times a week in the group. So now not only are you building the habits that it takes to get to the gym and start learning the deadlift, but you are kind of hitting it from all angles, right? So now you're getting into the gym multiple times a week. Now you are getting direction, right? Outside knowledge being applied to that routine, so that Jess and Haley and Katie can give you feedback. It's more of a learning process, right? So now you have the support that you need, you have the habits that you need to start working towards those goals. So you don't just show up at the gym and you're like, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing. My deadlift looks nothing like that random deadlift that I saw on Instagram. I can't do this. Now you have outside feedback, outside knowledge, and the coaches can come in and say, hey, proud chest, or shoulders down, or whatever it is, so that you can start applying those cues and improving your deadlift and learning how to deadlift. And then you can start making more specific process oriented goals as the cues start to develop, as you start to learn more about the deadlift, as your form starts to improve, etc. So the same concept applies to nutrition. Again, going back to that like arbitrary body goal that people find on social media, and they're like, that's what I want to look like. So instead, take that concept, right? Maybe I'm going to kind of boil that down, because there's a whole lot of wrong that it comes to choosing random body goals. But maybe the concept of getting stronger and building muscle mass and showing up for yourself is what can be boiled down from that body goal. So maybe you take that vision and start looking towards the process goals that you can start to set. So instead of thinking, I am going to start on Monday, I'm going to eat in a caloric deficit, and I'm going to cut all of these quote unquote bad foods out because that's what I imagine this person did to achieve that physique. Instead, ask yourself, what do I know about this? What do I know about what it takes to achieve that goal? Do I really know it, or is this just an assumption that I am making? Many times it's an assumption. So instead, a process-oriented goal could be learning more about nutrition, watching my videos in here because they're 100% free, and there are hours and hours worth of nutrition knowledge if you search the hashtag nutrition with Morgan in this group. Watch a lesson a week, and then you can start to learn more about nutrition and what it takes to achieve these goals. Maybe it is reaching out towards to a coach. Maybe it is reading more about nutrition, whatever it is. And then you can start to collect the knowledge that you need to start working towards learning the skills and habits required to achieve that goal of building more muscle and showing up for yourself. So, um, again, like the best reflection question is, do I know enough about this topic to start tomorrow? And many times people just don't, but they make these assumptions and then they roll with the assumptions and they end up in hot water. So there should always be more process oriented goals than outcome goals. I'm going to talk about this more a little later on in the lesson. Um, Outcome goals just aren't guaranteed, and it's really hard to set a good outcome goal if you don't know enough about the process. So that's why people just tend to set really crappy outcome goals, and it sets themselves up for failure. An example of that would be like the body goals example that I gave you. People are like, I just need to lose 10 pounds and I will look like this person. But in reality, that person has maybe 10, 15 pounds more muscle mass than you do. And it's a lot more complicated than that, right? You're not going to look exactly like that person, or that person has been training 10, 15 years more than you have. And so they just have a much different looking physique, and that's fine. But it's more complicated than just losing 10 pounds. Um, so if you were to know that, you could set a better outcome based goal. Instead of losing 10 pounds, maybe it is learning about more about nutrition. Maybe it is increasing your protein intake this month. Maybe it's eating more consistently throughout the day, so that you can maximize the muscle protein synthesis process so that you're getting more out of your protein intake, so that you can build a leaner, more muscular physique. So these are just like examples, more really common scenarios that I see as a coach. Um, so the next little bit is another example of setting like a poor outcome goal would be they set an outcome goal that just isn't going to achieve what they think it's going to achieve. Again, I see this often in nutrition where people will say, hey, if I just lose weight, then I'm going to feel better. And I'm not going to struggle with body image because if I lose weight, I won't struggle with body image. But body image isn't wholly reliant on a number or on your weight. And so the two, there might be some correlation, but it's not causation. So if you want to improve your body image, you need to specifically work on your body image, not on losing weight, because you can lose weight and still struggle with your body image. So that would be an inappropriate outcome goal for the pain point. Again, we see this in training. This is something that I struggle with too, is maybe you're struggling with self-worth and you set the goal of PRing your hip thrust or your deadlift or whatever lift it is. And you're like, if I just hit that PR, then I'll feel better. But there's no causation there. So self-worth and self-esteem come from internal understanding, self-love, self-acceptance, and not an external influence like training. So if you want to improve your self-worth, you need to do things that specifically work on your self-worth, not on achieving training PRs. So there has to be a clarification. You have to really sit down and be real with yourself and ask yourself, what am I feeling? What are the things that I'm currently struggling with? And then build from there. Make sure that you're setting outcome goals or even process goals that reflect the pain point that you are struggling with. I struggled with this for like so long, 15 years maybe. I'm 32. I would set process and outcome goals that had nothing to do with my pain point. I was struggling with perfectionism, self-worth, poor body image, and I would set all of these body composition and training goals And I'd be like, okay, if I just run a marathon in under X amount of time, then my problems will go away. And it just didn't work like that. So we see a lot of like younger athletes struggle with that. You want to make sure it reflects your pain points. Um, so that was like a wrap on process versus outcome goals. There's two other perspectives that you can view your goal setting from, and you kind of want to overlap all three of these together. They work simultaneously. Another way that you can kind of cross track your goals during the season is to look at them from a micro versus a macro perspective. So this is a concept that I have used like in coaching. I was a CrossFit coach. I coached like really big group classes. And so it was a way for me to make sure that I was giving direction to all of the athletes in the class and was thorough with my coaching. Micro being small cues, so working with like an individual, and then macro being big cues, working with a class. So kind of like layering those together. But you can apply this concept to anything, like as a parent, as a um, employer, as a friend. Just small things and big things is basically the overall concept of it. So now that you know what a process goal is, a macro process goal, a big process goal might be, I want to consistently show up 5 to 6 times a week at the gym. A micro goal would be, I want to drink a post workout shake after my training session. Or I want to keep my scapula retracted during my pull ups or my bench. Just like small goals layered in with the larger goals. Um, a macro goal might be, I want to gain a pound a week in order to gain muscle mass. A micro goal might be, I'm going to pack my oats in my gym bag so that I have post workout carbs with my shake. So, like big process goals and small process goals, all kind of intertwined. Another perspective that you can use outside of micro versus macro would be long term versus short term. So you want to think like, today I am going to do this week I'm going to do this month I'm going to do this year, etc. So the importance of this is that goal setting is a spectrum. It's not just this like very linear, if I just do this and I show up and then I'll accomplish this. It's a lot more multifaceted than that. And so you want to look at it from different angles, so that you have your bases covered and that they are realistic goals that feel good. So I'm going to give you a few personal examples of what I mean by that, because I have learned a lot as a athlete and as a coach just over the last like 15 years of training and working with people, setting goals myself. So I used to be the person that would, again, like I would just show up and be like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 2022, and I'm going to be the best, like most badass version of myself because I lost 10 pounds. I'm going to feel so good. I'm not going to struggle with body image because I lost the 10 pounds. I am going to, hit that 300-pound deadlift. I am going to squat 250 pounds. I am going to do 20 pull-ups. Like I was just setting all these goals, and they might have even been realistic goals for me. Okay. They might even be realistic based off of my percentages and what I have already accomplished as an athlete. But what I was struggling with, those things had no impact on that. So I was struggling with perfectionism. I was struggling with body image. I was struggling with self-worth. And so those things, like while it was important to show up at the gym and take care of myself and stuff like that, those helped me with body image and self-acceptance and whatnot. They didn't directly like improve them. They just put me in a good place for being a human. So in reality, if I wanted to work on those concepts, I would have to go to therapy. I would have to journal. I would have to do more inner self work than showing up at the gym and being concerned with like quote unquote perfect macros, stuff like that. Um, and I see this in a lot of my clients as well, people who struggle with body image, and then they're hyper fixating on, well, are my macros the right macros? Should I eat 150 grams of protein or 152 grams of protein? And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're struggling with body image, you need more body image work. If you're struggling with self work, you need more self worth work. Um, that 2 or 5 or 10 grams of protein that you're worried about doesn't influence those things and just isn't important in the grand scheme of things. So you just want to make sure that you are looking at it from a big perspective down. Are these things reflective of my actual pain points that I'm struggling with? And then kind of work in from there. Is this a topic that I know enough about to start working on tomorrow? Do I need outside support? So for me, outside support was hiring a therapist and working with a therapist on the pain points that I was struggling with. A process that was a process oriented goal, right? Going to therapy once a week. And then the therapist can help me set more process oriented goals. Hey, this is your action step for this week. And it reflects the work that I need to do in order to work on my body image or my self worth or whatever. Hey, journaling. Journal for 5 minutes every day. That's a process oriented goal to help me get to the ultimate outcome goal of having flexible and empowering self worth. Instead of what I used to do, which was set really big training goals or really big body composition goals and just kind of get defeated when they didn't help me with what I was struggling with. Like my self worth never improved, even if I accomplished those, um, losing that 10 pounds or that 250-pound squat, whatever. Um, I still was struggling because it didn't help the pain points. It didn't help me work through that pain point. Um, I talk a lot about nutrition periodization because it's just what I do, right? I'm a nutrition coach. And so as we, um, as I help people walk through like fat loss phases and gaining phases and maintenance phases and reverses and stuff like that, that's how you can accomplish many of the body composition goals that people set out to achieve. You want to apply that periodization process to your goal setting as well, because certain focuses require a lot of stress. It's stress, psychological stress, physical stress. And so when you vary your approach throughout the year, it gives you kind of it works in breaks so that you can recover, relax, and kind of put your best foot forward when it's time to really grind. And we do the same thing in our training as well. You'll see a variance in the amounts of sets and reps and time. Like I'm sure you've seen a training session and you're like, wow, there's only 3 movements programmed for today. It's only going to take me like an hour. And somehow it ends up taking you longer because of the stimulus, right? And then the next day, maybe the training session takes a lot less and you walk out feeling not as exasperated because of the variance in stimulus, right? And so that variance in stimulus is important because, again, it allows you to put your best foot forward on the days that require you to do so. So it's kind of like work in rest so that you're not just beating yourself down 365 days of the year and just kind of living off of steam. You need rest. The rest helps you be productive when you work. So by layering that all in, these concepts of a process versus a outcome goal or a micro versus a macro goal or a short-term versus a long-term goal, you have little bits and pieces that will help you build momentum as you're working towards those goals. So I know, like, at the end of a training week, it feels good to have gone in and work hard 4 to 5 times during the week, right? I can look back and be like, hell yeah, I did that. So then the next week, I can build confidence going into it, knowing I can accomplish that, and that was manageable, and I can sustain that over a long period of time. And then I could look back on the training week and look at the other process oriented goals that I accomplished. Hey, I also logged or posted, say 2 or 3 form checks. And Coach Jess told me, hey, I needed to work on this in my overhead press. And then the next week I applied that and I improved. And she was like, that looked really good. So now the week after I can add weight. It all kind of builds on itself. So you're not just staring and being like, why don't I have a 135-pound overhead press yet? Well, because you just started learning, and it takes time, and you might not even achieve that 135-pound press in your lifetime, but you are collecting all of these process goals that will still get you to where you want to go. It's not about the number. It's not about that 135-pound press or that 300-pound deadlift or that 10 pounds. It's about the process oriented goals regardless. Like, those are the things that will teach you what you need to learn. Those are the things that will develop, like, lead to the personal development that will accomplish what you want to accomplish. So even if you don't hit those numbers, you're still going to show up and work hard and build confidence because you're showing up. You're still going to learn a whole lot about training. You're still going to gain a whole lot of strength. You're still going to become that person that you wanted to become. And you're going to be a lot happier doing it because you are not so focused on that PR. Every week, you're not going to be like, wow, I didn't hit a PR, so I didn't accomplish anything. Because you're going to be looking at all of those process oriented goals that you accomplished instead of looking at the outcome goals that we don't have control over them. Um, so it's always about the process goals. Like, if you are setting your resolutions for this year, for 2022, and you're looking and you're like, what do I want to accomplish? Think about your pain points. Think about what you're struggling with, and then go from there. Because ask yourself, like, do I know enough about this to start working on it in January? If you don't, then start looking for support. If you're struggling with body image, then maybe you hire a coach that specifically works with body image, or you hire a therapist that specifically works with body image or self-worth. If you are struggling with your health and you're not really sure what to do, you're like just Googling stuff, um, and you don't really know what it takes, hire a coach or start doing some reading. Reach out to me. I will send you plenty of literature that you can start reading. You have all of these free resources posted under my hashtag in this group, hours and hours and hours worth. There's so many things that you can do to start preparing in this season right now so that you can start on the process goals in January. Because nothing is more depressing than starting a year off and having this outcome goal in your head, and then the first week being like, I already failed because you didn't know what to do to start working towards that goal. Or that goal just wasn't appropriate for you. So you start working towards it and it's like, it just doesn't feel like it's doing anything. So that's a good place to start. Think about what you're struggling with and then go from there. Do I know enough about this to start working in January? If you do, cool. Start brainstorming some process oriented goals. Start looking at it from the short term versus long term perspective and the micro versus macro perspective, and making sure that there's a lot of like little goals that you can start working towards during, like, when you first got started, and during your journey, because that's how I started when I was really struggling with my body image. I was like, okay, this obviously isn't working. I have accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish as an athlete, and it's just not working. I'm still struggling with this, and I'm really done. I'm tired of feeling this way. So I looked at what specifically would help my body image, and it had nothing to do with training. It had nothing to do with nutrition. It had everything to do with internal work. And so that's where I focused on. And then I started seeing a lot of improvements in my body image because of that. And I set a lot of process oriented goals that would motivate me moving forward, so that I knew I could look back and be like, hey, like, I have confidence because I set out and I did the thing, today, tomorrow, this week, next month. Like, I kept doing what it took to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. I kept going to therapy. I kept journaling. I kept doing the assignments and stuff that I needed to do to continue to work on my body image. So, because it directly reflected my pain point, I saw direct improvements. Um, the biggest thing is to just, you need to have the knowledge in order to make good outcome goals. And in order to have the knowledge, you need to set process oriented goals. So, set process oriented goals, they should be the majority of the goals that you set. And then you can always set outcome based goals later on and redefine them, because process oriented goals are more long term goals, anyways. One of my process oriented goals right now is to put on as much muscle mass and preserve as much bone density as I can going into menopause. I'm 32, so that's like a long term goal for me. And it has a lot of flexibility, right? And there's not a whole lot of stress towards it. And it's more reliant on my process goals that I set. I need to make sure that I am eating enough. I need to do some sort of resistance training, which I am doing here in TWK. I need to follow up with my physician and get bone density exams done every few years to make sure that I am right on track. So that is like a big outcome goal that's long term that I can start working towards. Very broad. Another outcome goal that I have for 2022 is to continue learning. So process oriented goals that would be kind of fall under that umbrella of that outcome goal of learning more would be to read 10 minutes every day of whatever topic I want to learn about. That's a process oriented goal that Katie sets too. Maybe it is, I signed up for a cert in another certification in March. So I'm going to continue learning about a specific topic. Maybe it's continuing to go to therapy or whatever. I'm just continuing to learn. So that is a big, broad umbrella outcome based goal. And then the process oriented goals are small goals that I can collect and work towards that build confidence, knowing, hey, I'm definitely going to learn because I am reading 10 pages a day or 10 minutes a day. I am signing up for continued education. I am continuing to do the work that leads to that goal. So outcome-based goals should always be broad and leave room for flexibility instead of I'm going to lose 10 pounds, because that won't help me on what I need to work on. And it doesn't really even get like the number-based goals when it comes to body composition need context, and they're always going to fluctuate over time. People get really caught up in losing 10 pounds or gaining 5 pounds of muscle or whatever, but there's going to be large fluctuations in the scale as you train for life as an athlete. If you are working as a strength-based athlete and you are resistance training, because you are building muscle mass and directly influencing your body composition. I was just telling another client earlier that my highest weight this year was a few pounds under what I weighed when I was 9 months pregnant. Like body weight needs context, because if I were to just focus on that number, I could have been like, oh man, like I totally fudged it this year. Like I can't believe that I almost weighed what I weighed when I was 9 months pregnant. What am I doing? It needs context, because if I am working towards gaining muscle mass and I am eating well and I'm training well, it's going to look different than when I am focused on keeping my baby healthy and growing. Um, so context matters. So hopefully this was helpful, just kind of like a funnel lesson on setting goals, how to set them, things to think about when you are setting them. You always want to think about your pain point. You always want to focus on process-oriented goals, and then worry about the outcome-based goals. And if you do set outcome-based goals from the beginning, make sure they're very, very broad, like learning more. That's a great process-oriented goal. Like continuing to show up for yourself. That's a great outcome-based goal for 2022, because it's a huge umbrella and it gives you time and space to really focus on the process-oriented goals. And then you can always kind of fine-tune under that umbrella and get more specific as you know more and learn more. So unless anyone has any questions for today's lesson, I'm going to wrap things up. Um, and if you have any requests for future lessons, someone posted earlier about alcohol and training and body composition, so I'm going to do a lesson on that. If you have one that you want to see covered, feel free to reach out to me or comment in the comment section below, and I will add it to the list. And just a friendly reminder that if you do need captions, if captions are helpful, it's going to be about like 24 hours before I can post the link to the video that has captions on it. It's just, that's how long it takes for the system to automate and for the captions to be added to the videos. So a little bit of a delay there, but at least we have the captions for the people who need them. Otherwise, I hope you'll have a great Sunday, and I will see you next week.